Good evening. You're listening to the Extreme Movie Show. I'm your host, Rob, broadcasting to you as usual from the Pine Hills Palace just west of Orlando, Florida. I'm in the Extreme Studios checking out an old film from the 40s with Humphrey Bogart called Sahara, and I have on the line with me from the Great Midwest one, RDV. RDV, we've covered a lot of classic films lately. We're big fans of Humphrey Bogart and all that too. I will say Sahara is a film that I think is very good. It's not one that when it comes to Bogart, that I want to put on and watch over and over again. But every time it does come on, if I commit myself to watch it, I go, man, what a fantastic film for a lot of reasons. I'm looking forward to talking about that with you tonight. I want to just preface this movie by saying it's one of the first few movies that I remember seeing colorized, because I think there's a version of it floating around in the 80s maybe or something. And I can see where it makes a big difference. But perhaps one of the first uses in a film of that binocular outline, which I love so well, because this is definitely a war movie. But if somebody's not a World War II buff, you don't have to be to understand what's going on here, and that's what makes this movie so great. It's just the backdrop for what is going on with a bunch of characters in it too. I'm curious, is this the first watch for you?
First watch for me, and if I recall, they said, I'm guessing this is based off true events.
See,
or
hi.
I don't know if it's a true event or just one account or different accounts, but basically, like I said, these a group of American soldiers came over, were training with the British over in Africa, and in the Sahara Desert. And we start off with Bogart and two Americans. Basically, their tank isn't running, and they're trying to get it run. They're taking fuel from another tank and parts, and they're told they have to flee, retreat. And while they're dodging mortar shell, and they're in there trying to get the engines started, they're told, okay, not only they retreat, but they can't go north, east, or west, so they have to go south, which is pretty much a death sentence because that's the Sahara Desert. And what anyone was watching with Sahara Desert or any desert, it's hills of sand, and you sink into it because the tank is heavy. I was wondering, like, are they going to get stuck? Is this going to be like Fight of the Phoenix?
Right.
Because it has some similarities with that too. Because this is pretty much like any RPG game you played, where you move along, you gain new characters, and you join your team, and then you come across enemies. And I guess I really enjoyed this because this is my first Bogart movie where he's not a gangster. He's not a criminal. He's not a private detective. He is a soldier in the army, in the United States Army. And like I said, it was actually kind of cool. Now, the only downside to this movie I had technically, because I was watching on YouTube, it's a technical thing, because when you're filming it in black and white and you're filming scenes that are in the sunlight for a long time, it gets hard to see. And especially when we get the sandstorm, I would have loved to see that in color, originally filmed in color, because the black and white, it's like, okay, there's a sand coming here, because I watch other movies that had sandstorms.
Yep.
Yeah, but I was like, I can't see anything that's going on. And then I'll nitpick on this. There's a scene where they get in this sandstorm. They have to take refuge in this little hut, it's left over, abandoned, village over. And as they're getting out of the tank, I'm like, they leave the front lid open where the hatches we see out of, instead of closing it to keep less sand coming in. They leave it open, and they just abandon the tank. And I'm thinking, like, why would you do that?
Maybe for air? I don't know.
Because the tank's going to get buried by the sand. You're abandoning it going into the thing. So I would close the hatch, because they closed the other door.
Yeah, it's when you do black and white. We talked about this before with some classic films. The makeup and stuff can be different. This is a movie that's particularly, I would say, violent. Obviously, it's very short on that kind of effect to it.
Yeah.
It's look. You can have your desert one of two ways. You're just deserts, I guess is what we're saying. You can have them like this, where it's cold and bleak, black and white, with just the wind blowing and howling, like it would be on the opening of the old TV show Kung Fu from the 70s with David Carradine. Or it could be where it looks like in The Old Band, the one show that we reviewed here on the Extreme Movie Show, where it's desert, but there's scruff and there's this and that. This is very bleak. It's very disgusting. And that not only they're battling the elements, they're having to battle other groups and the German forces.
And running up. And the big thing is that when you're in a desert, no matter what story you're doing, there's always going to be someone who runs out of water.
Yes.
And this seems to be the main plot for this movie, because they're they only have so much rations. They have to go 70 some miles to get to what supposedly are some wells left over. Some cities have been there.
Yep.
And as they go through, they first come across an Italian soldier, and Bogart, just like every war movie, well, if we take him in, I have 10 other men, because they first come across the British soldiers.
Yep.
And they bring them along, and as they go, they're trying to get to another base, or somewhere, and so that they already have these. Now they have 10 men, so going for 3, and they have just 7 more. They have 10 men, and come across this Italian soldier who worked back time. Those Italian soldiers in World War II, you really didn't take prisoners of war unless you could properly take care of them.
Yes.
And this is another person to share rations with. And as Bogart originally says, I'm not taking him with him, because what happens when these 10 men run out of water? That's already 10 men I have to deal with. This guy too, they're going to turn on him. But eventually he has a heart, and he softens, and
does the right thing.
Lets the guy come in,
Yep.
And for the most part, the guy's pretty much loyal to him, and along the way, like I said, the characters they meet here, the British soldiers, they're not just all British soldiers. One was actually a French underground resistance soldier who basically was kicked out of the resistance because he became too violent.
This is all weird, because talking about World War II, I mean, look, the Muslims already conquered at some point in history most of North Africa, but you also had a very strong French contingent, as well as British, being the primary monarchy around the world in the 1800s. So America getting pulled into World War II isn't really what this is about. It's not about the politics of it.
No.
It's about the fact that you have all these different groups of people that have to sort of get together, and the mission is basically, it's not just, if we get 200 miles south or whatever it is, we're good. It's hey, we got these Germans, they're still going on. And hunting in the background a little bit, at the end of the movie, when they talk about Field Marshal Rommel, the whole African part of World War II is almost never taught anymore. And I don't know how well World War II is taught in schools. I was curious what your experience was like, because to me, I immediately think of being in America, we always hear about Pearl Harbor. We always think about us. We always think about the Germans rolling in and taking France, and France laying over
Germans
like a dog.
going in Africa, if I remember correctly, it was because they're using anything they could to basically use ports. To go move around the world, and the British already had some colonies in Africa, and they basically decided we're fighting a 2-front war. So when the Americans finally joined after World War II, it really helped kick the Germans out of the desert. The thing is that it really helped too is that the Germans were not really prepared for the desert as much.
Right.
That's why they weren't prepared for going into Russia.
That was ultimately their downfall too. That front,
with this movie, you said this is dirty, gritty. The British soldiers, I like about this. They're all basically identified like anybody else. They have their personalities. They have some are married, some aren't. But they have hopes and dreams, and they talk about what they do for water as they're running out of water here. They're dumping the sand out of their shoes and stuff. One guy's I got calluses. The other guy's like, if I hear one more word about your calluses, I'm gonna beat the crap out of you. Mm-hmm. Like, I thought it was really cool. That how relatable and some of these people are. They're just not like characters, but they actually are fleshed out. And so the whole goal of this movie originally was just to get water. Then it turns into, once they finally do find a well, when the second well they get to has water in it, they learn that the German scout comes up, and they want to basically they're in desperate need of water too. So Bogart gets this idea. Hey, how about I hold this off and I send Waco, the other tank gunner. You can take this German Volkswagen / tank, and go to the British outpost. While the Germans come this way, you sneak around them and you go get help. And I'll hold this, and then we'll arrest all of them. And what's really cool with this too, as I said, the other personalities is even American soldiers. Waco and another guy played by what was his name?
Not Lloyd Bridges.
Not Lloyd Bridges' character. This is. Oops. Hold on a second.
Well, while you're looking that up, I'll just mention what's interesting about here is they're moving south and all that too. Is you have these conflicting different groups of people. You got the British people that meet up along with the French, but then you got the German states. So you got these different parties. It's just not Bogart and his crew, which would have been an easy way to do it, right? But balancing all that stuff's not easy to do, and they do a good job of that here.
Duryea is actually the character, the actor's name. He plays the other gunner. The other gunner. He stays with him, and it was just kind of cool to see that these people working together and not really turning on each other like normally you'd see in a movie. Jimmy Doyle is a character name, is of the American soldier that stays behind him, and Waco, because they could Waco Hoyt because he's called Waco because he's from Texas. They have an ongoing bet. They keep betting money to each other, like first when they before they got to the British soldiers, they're betting on whether Joe Gunn, played by Humphrey Bogart, could get the tank running, and then when he does, they have to pay up the money. So they make another bet. The bet is basically that Waco could go get help, and one bet's $10, one bet's $5, and the key words he says is like, he's like, hey, what are you getting the money for? It's like, it's like there's a good chance you may not even make it out. He's like, well, then I'll that's it, But and honestly, the guy who you think who normally would die in the situation, Waco, survives. Yeah, it's the other guy he doesn't, and and so you're down to just two Americans. Obviously, Waco is the big cinch point, I guess. Linchpin, because he comes through with the Africans, but only after they set up camp and this base. Meanwhile, like I said, they had the Italian soldier prisoner, I guess, and they also came across a German pilot, highly decorated German officer pilot.
As soon as you see blonde hair, you got to think it's a bad guy. We talked about the blonde haired female that's always the femme fatale, right? But, I mean, you see here because it's German to the audience, right?
So what I like about this, the German soldier in here, and he ends up basically they shoot him down with the tank because they make him think that they all hide under the tank, make him think like they're out of ammunition in the tank, and finally after a couple passes they shoot him down and his plane crashes. The only casualty is one of the British soldiers got shot in the chest, and remember they can't really spare water as much, and the guy eventually dies on the back of the tank. But the German soldier, though they take prisoner, he claims to speak no English whatsoever, but then Bogart kind of notices a few things throughout the movie that this guy kind of seems like he's understanding things. He's laughing. Why is this guy laughing? And it's just like later on we finally learn that this guy does speak English, the German, because he starts plotting with the Italian while they're holed up in. They basically keep him locked prisoner inside the abandoned outpost. Mm-hmm. Stone hut. What I don't understand is that why did they leave the Italian with a steak knife in his hand?
Because he likes to eat.
Yeah, but I mean, like, he's a prisoner, and he's another the German. Like, you would think that'd be a bad idea, and I don't. Maybe I could put this on the fact that this is a bad writing. These guys are delirious. They probably don't have that much water, and not until they did later on, till they finally get this well going. But with so much going on, they probably might have slipped their mind. Frenchie is the one that's in charge of guarding them. Like I said, the German ends up killing the Italian because the Italian learns that the guy can speak English, and he will not join forces with the German after he doesn't, especially at this passionate speech about my family when we were forced to join under Mussolini. Mussolini thinks he's a god. But I learned that Mussolini is a god. He's just a guy, and then he talks crap about the Fuhrer, and so he's a maniac, and just like the German out of rage stabs him in the back with the knife, and so eventually when the Germans army does show up, like they hold him off and they use some of the motor the mines that were inside the car that Waco took off with the German tank, mm-hmm. which I gotta mention which was marked wrong on the decals. They usually have the cross on there, but instead they had the swastikas on there, which isn't a typical thing they would do. They put a cross on there.
Yeah, that's interesting because it might have had something to do with the movie making code here in the United States at the time. Like they would only show some symbols. I don't know.
Because his plane didn't have.
Because you see the swastikas like on their hats and everything too, and on the emblems on their dress, so you would think it would all match up.
Yeah, the plane had the cross, but didn't have the swastika on it though.
Right.
So it was interesting to see that one, half-backed or whatever it's called, Anyway, so when the men show up, and they start taking him out with machine gun fire and the mortar shots, and they basically tell it's like, they meet with a guy, the big German officer. Bogart goes out there. He's like, let's make a deal. I think, he's like, I understand that you guys are hungry. He's like, we'll exchange food, food for water. But then Bogart, in the middle of it, he said after sending the goons back to, because usually they get two guys to show up with the tank. That's why they got to wake up the car. One of them, it's basically spilled the beans for water.
Yep. And
that guy gets killed by the other German while they're leaving. So when this journal does come up with the Germans, and he goes to make a deal, and Bogart changes the deal. He says, for every rifle you bring me, you get like a pint of water. And it's like, and the guy's like, oh, that's absurd. It's like, it's like, well, that's what he wants. No gun, no water.
Well, it's interesting because when I look at this movie and I say, okay, it's a war film. I mean, obviously, it's hard to not argue that. For me, I think the fascination of this film is not just it's a simple enough story. Again, kind of a chase thing there with the war in the background. We could argue about specifics about the war, what it may represent, like Casablanca. Obviously, Rick's real neutral in that movie, and you might say that that's kind of how America was until they got pulled in. I think for this film, though, you mentioned something earlier, and it sounds kind of simple, but I like it. Is that I'm watching this film. I can feel the sand. If you've ever got sand or like that, that's fine. Here in Florida, it's really humid, so we don't get those air puffs of sand when you walk or drive by, for like with a car that hang in the air, and you see that here a lot. And obviously there's set pieces here too, but I've never seen so much sand on a set before that looked like I could reach out and touch it and grab it and feel like I really like the feeling of being claustrophobic, either in the wells or in the tanks and all that too, and also being on the desert. You think it'd be boring because there's not much being shown to you.
Yep. The other British soldier is like, remember how we used to we'd spend our leisure time playing on the beach? Now I want nothing to do with it.
Well, and also too, it's as simple as it sounds. When they go to a well and they find that it's dry, then they got to kind of change their plans to go to another one. And now it's a big deal, and it's just a trickle.
Yeah,
that puts some tension into it because everyone's taking the lack of water seriously rather than the threat, which could be the enemy. And I love how the sand's just like falling into the well and all that too. Or like you say, the sandstorms come up, it burrows the tank up and everything too. It's really interesting to watch. It's aged well when it comes to the sand.
The other actor is they have a black actor in here who is part of the basically his character Talbum is part of the British infantry, and he had captured the Italian soldier. So when they brought both of them along, Talbum actually is the one that is his guy because he's lived in Africa for 3 generations. He's the 3rd generation. He knows where all the cities are with the well caps and stuff. So when they finally get to the well, he's the one that crawls down the well. He finds the water. And the whole idea was they know they're going to run out of water soon, but the Germans don't know that. And if they can just tire them out, and they have the British army come behind them, that was the goal. But best laid plans, they could go to and they usually go sideways. Because the German does, after he kills the Italian, he makes a break for it, running out to the Germans to tell them that there's no water left. So Talbum's like, "Don't worry, boss, I got it." And the guy, this is the guy is a true act of bravery. He knows he's gonna die. He chases the German in the midst of gunfire coming his way. He gets shot in the shoulder once, but he actually goes up to the German soldier, and he manages to catch him, and he holds his face in the sand.
Yeah.
That's
kind of cool, right?
Yeah. The actor plays the German actually, and he said in a later interview, he said like he actually nearly did pass out almost because they went a little too far because he couldn't breathe for real.
Yeah.
So Talbum ends up getting killed after that. But like you said, every character they flash them out so that when they get bumped off or shot or killed, you feel it. It's right in the feels. You kind of feel like a sense of brotherhood. Kind of that's kind of why I like the show Band of Brothers. You really get to know about these characters in such a little amount of time. And so when they get knocked off, it's just like, wow, it's just like you kind of feel for the characters that are still alive. You know, Bogart and Ozzy are the only last two of the 10 other than Waco who shows up. Everyone else at the end of this movie is dead.
Yeah.
And you see him because he comes up and because he said that because they talked about bets, and also talked about getting a miracle. And Bogart was talking to one of the British soldiers. And he says, like, miracles, it takes work. They don't just happen. You got to work for them. And at the end, he shows him. He's got all of the British soldiers, or not the British soldiers, but the German soldiers. After they kill their general, their platoon leader, squad leader, they actually do surrender because they want water. And they're like, well, there's your water over there. Drop it there. And because at this point, they don't realize there's no water left. The Germans don't know that. But then one of the soldiers, miracle, actually hit one of the well water and actually caused the water to bubble up out of the well. So it was like, so there actually was more water. You see Bogart in the tank, and he's got all the German soldiers basically at gunpoint, and they're marching in front of him, and they come and they meet Waco and the British soldiers, and here's your miracle, because he said he was going to do it. That was his whole goal. Is like, we could do this, because Bogart said, like, because originally the British soldiers didn't want to risk their lives. He's like, well, you think the people at War of 1917 or any of those guys, your British soldiers landing, like any of these things, the people at Pearl Harbor, do you think these people really wanted to basically do what they did? I think we're all kind of crazy. He said, we all have a sense of honor, what's right and wrong, and it's bigger than all of us.
Yeah, I think that when you look at this and what you said before about Bogart, you see in a movie where he's not like a detective or like that.
Yeah,
I still feel like he's very strong in it. I bring up Lloyd Bridges in here because I was a kid. I remember him from Airplane, but his son, he has a couple of children. His son Bo was in a movie that was filmed outside of Central Florida here in a place called Mount Dora. That's kind of was interesting at the time. And then Jeff Bridges, of course, is in the show that I'd referenced earlier, and The Old Man, and he does a great job in it too. So it's interesting how small things are, because there's a lot of films that you would not get necessarily credits for, whatever. And even Bogart never made it big on the screen until after he did a lot of little things, just the small things that we've talked about that on other Bogey films. But overall, this is a movie that you just do not think about, like a North and North by Hitchcock or Maltese Falcon and all that. But it still is a great Bogart performance. I think it's a very good film, and it looks great to watch. It's a nice watch.
It's sad that everything goes to Casablanca, and that's what it says on the poster. It's a sensational star of Casablanca.
Yes.
He's done way much more that I think is better than Casablanca. The Big Sleep is one of them.
Yep. Final thoughts?
Final thoughts. If you haven't watched this movie and you're a Bogart fan, check it out. It's free on Tubi.
Yeah, it looks good. It's not been edited as far as I can tell from what I've heard. I know sometimes that happens. Tubi's usually pretty good about it. It's also on the Internet Archive too as well, although that may be a colorized version, somebody was telling me. So check that out.
Yeah, those are out there, but I'm like,
colorized I think takes away from it, because when it's black and white, it's sunshine and shadow, and it's filmed that way. It
was meant to be shot in black and white because that's what it's shot. The colorizing was meant to be shot in color, so that's why it doesn't add up when you put in color to it.
Yeah. So you have it, ladies and gentlemen, Sahara, 1943, I believe. Humphrey Bogart, check it out. It is a great film. It's a great performance by Bogart. Definitely, if you're into old films, you're probably aware of it. But again, we don't hear about. Check it out, guys. Listen to what you think.
Proves he's a versatile actor. He can do more than just a gangster role.
Exactly. Absolutely. And he's hitting on all cylinders here, too. Yeah. All right. Good night now.
Later, guys.